audience watches me meet them. So yeah, man, good to see you. We talked on the phone briefly, and it's a story that I have told a million times with other people, is that often I will start talking to a guest that's going to come on, and they start telling me a cool story or something interesting about them, and I have to always rudely and like an asshole, I have to be like, hey, stop telling me that story. And they're always like, oh, okay, sorry. And I'll be like, no, it's a very interesting story, and I want to save it for the podcast because, as you know, like, we're just doing this. There's no script. We're just doing this off the top of our heads. Right. If you tell me a really cool story and I'm like, that was amazing, and it's legitimately a good story, I don't want you to come back on here and tell me the same story and I have to act all fake and animated.
Got it.
Yeah. So for that whole explanation for everyone listening, I was talking to Paul last week on the phone, and he started telling me about filming sharks underwater after retiring from, I believe, somewhere in corporate finance, he said.
Right. I worked in mostly large New York City banks, Chemical Bank, and banks like that. Mm-hmm. And was working for MasterCard, so financial services industry. Mm-hmm. Everything from pure banking to electronic payments. We were kind of the first to invent, if you will, home banking. When you pay a bill on your phone today? Yeah. Well, we invented all the protocols that make that happen.
Really?
That's what I did for a real living. I had to put the food on the table and the roof over our heads.
Yeah. So what got you?
It was a lot of fun.
Yeah. What got you started with that? Because I'm interested in everything. So what got you started in that? What was that? What you wanted to
do? Pretty much dumb luck. Okay. Sometimes in corporate life, it's nice to say you have a plan and you can plan out your corporate life. But sometimes events happen. And I was a corporate economist for a while and wanted to do something different. I had some operational skills, so I went to a different side of banking and was running a department that did credit analysis. Unfortunately, the bank decided to close that department down. Again, one of those things you can't control in corporate life, right? Mm-hmm. And they said, if you hang with it and close the department down, you can go wherever you want in the bank. So they were developing this thing called Pronto Home Banking. I said, that kind of sounds kind of like fun, And it was the first banking on computers. So since I had some financial skills, operational skills, management skills, that's where I went. And had a lot of fun doing that because in the early days of home banking, it was quite a ride. Because, today we pay a bill, it goes seamlessly from your computer to your bank to the merchant you're paying. Mm-hmm. Wasn't that way in the early days. In the early days, the back-end links weren't there. You might be scheduling a payment on a computer, okay? But in the back end, there weren't a lot of links from the banks to the merchant, okay? So if you and I are both paying Macy's $200 on the same day, well, they might give Macy's all $400 to either one of us. They had, sometimes they were cutting physical checks. We had guys who were making their payments on the last day it was due, thinking electronically it'll go, only to find their water get cut off and when they had a hot date that night and they couldn't take a shower. So those are the kind of calls we used to get in customer service. I can't take a shower. I paid my bill electronically. Did you make a water supply? Well, it wasn't really electronic. I'm sorry to inform you. So you're out of luck.
It was kind of a luck. So you went from that, and again, we spoke on the phone, and you said a quote that I remember hearing towards the end of my college career when I decided I didn't want to be a doctor. And it's on your deathbed. No one ever said on their deathbed, gee, I wish I spent more time in the office.
Exactly.
And it's, I guess, unless you're like that, those rare individuals who that is your passion, is building your own. So I bet Elon Musk probably will say that. But I mean, aside from him.
Yeah. I've met some people like that who kind of define themselves by their work. I had one boss who was on a call with somebody saying they were having a fight, and they said, well, you tell them that I am the vice president of X and X Bank, And I said to myself, now, if you weren't the ex-president of so-and-so bank, what would you define yourself as? They define themselves by their work.
Yeah.
I never did. For me, work was a means to an end, So that's me.
Yeah, and that's always an interesting thing. Yeah, what would you be without that? Well, one thing I asked myself kind of as college went on, or towards the very end, is I remember I came up with a weird analogy, and it was, if I was the only person in the world, what would I still be happy saying? So let's say I'm the vice president of Money Incorporated, that's great. I can use that. Do you know who I am? Do you know who my husband is? He's that. But I thought, what if no one else was alive? Or what if it was a simulation and I'm the only one here? How much would I really care about that title? And so
how do you define yourself?
So I was like, I want to do something that it doesn't matter who I tell. It's like, this is what I like, and I love this. Like, I don't care if anyone cares. And so, whereas that led to me turning down a med school acceptance, and long story short, ending up with a podcast, about 7 years of insanity in between, I don't know, you might have me one up. Long story in between, and you're swimming and you're in those cages and you're filming sharks.
Yeah, that was quite a trip.
Yeah, so how does that start? How does that? I'll shut up. I'll stop talking. How does that start?
That's okay. No, it's I started diving as back in 2000, kind of a dumb luck thing. I always was interested in it. As I grew up watching in the 1950s and early 60s, there was a TV show called Sea Hunt, starring Lloyd Bridges, father of Jeff Bridges and Will Bridges,
Big Lebowski,
and then came Jacques Cousteau. So that was kind of like on my radar. Someday I want to do that, but life gets in the way.
Yeah.
Fast forward many years later, my kids are off my payroll. The house is paid for. What do I want to do? Okay, I want to bail out of what I was doing in the corporate life. My wife had benefits and she was a teacher, so I paid for benefits on the side, so I could kind of afford to do what I want to do. And so I got, scuba diving. And eventually the diving kind of took on a life of its own. And you like to, after a while, you see lots of interesting things, but then what you see gets a little, not boring, but, okay, I've seen that, been there, done that. Let's do something more exciting. Let's amp it up. And sharks were always on my radar, especially after seeing Jaws many, many years ago.
So that was it. It was just, I just turned the heater on. I'm going to turn it off. So
yeah, sure.
You were just, that was, okay, I have the time. Like, I can do, you're right, I have the time now. I have the, the relative money. And it's kind of just, now what? And it's right. It's kind of like going to a buffet and you're like, okay, I got in, I checked into my hotel and I'm at the buffet. Like, what am I going to eat? And it was just sharks.
Yeah, and the first shark dive I ever had gone on was, I'd been diving for a while, and there was a trip to Nassau, Bahamas, and it was billed as a shark trip, see the sharks. So I said, this sounds kind of cool. Is it safe? And they said, oh yeah, you can do this. Yeah, it's fine. Well, okay, the sharks will come too close, but don't worry about it. All right. So these were Caribbean reef sharks. One thing you find out about most sharks like to eat sushi, not prime rib. So I felt safe after I was down there.
Okay.
So we're down there with this is no shark. This is no cage. This is out there diving with them. There's a guy in the middle.
What the hell?
Shooting the sharks with a stick, and the sharks are coming all around you and stuff like this.
Wait. So you're not in a cage? You're down there just sharks?
Yeah, this shark. This is the Nassau, Bahamas, Caribbean reef sharks, which are good-sized sharks. These sharks are 7 to 8, 9 feet long and pretty hefty, and but they're most of their food is fish. They like to eat sushi, like I said.
Okay.
So you're down there, and the thing about it is, you're down. Well, when we're on the way down, the guy says, okay, the sharks might come and approach you. If they approach you, don't swim away. Face the shark. It'll always swim away first. I said, okay, fine. Let's try that. So I'm going down there. He got into the water, and I see this, big shark coming towards me. I got my camera up. I go, this is going to be great. I get a nice picture of a shark. So he's coming closer, and he's coming closer. I'm thinking the guy's, voice in my head, don't swim away. Always face the shark. It'll swim away first. So I got the camera here. He's coming closer. He's coming closer. I said, now, when's the shark going to turn? And just as I was about to have an accident in my wetsuit, the shark kind of made a slight turn, took the shot, and he went over my shoulder. I thought, that was pretty cool. We went down to the bottom. We're extra weights on us so we don't bounce around down there and float around. They wanted us in a circle. And they started feeding these, Caribbean reef sharks. With a guy in the middle with fish heads out of a box. We put them on a spear, and the fish would come by, and the sharks would come by. They'd bump into you to get to the middle and stuff, but they didn't bother us. It was like, really, wow, this is pretty cool. They just said, don't do something stupid like reach out and try and touch it or pet it or grab it. You'll be fine. Accidents do happen, but not on this trip. So that was my first experience with sharks. And after that, I'd seen sharks on other trips or whatever. But never saw the big boys, the great whites. That was always on my radar in the back of my mind, maybe someday, And one day I was on a trip to Cozumel, and one of the divers on the boat had made this dive that I always wanted to do out in California to see great whites. And he told me about it, and I said, okay, it's time. I got to do this before who knows what happens down the road. You know, in this case, it was before the pandemic. Who knew what was coming a year or two later, right? Yeah. So that's how the great white shark trip happened. Taking a plane from here to San Diego, meeting up with the dive operator, take a bus to Ensenada, where you pick up the boat, and head out to Guadalupe Island, which is 160 miles off the coast in the Pacific, off the Mexican coast, where the sharks are. And if anybody's watched Shark Week, and they talk about great whites, the great whites of Guadalupe or whatever, you'll see this very stark island. This is the island where we're at, where they film all these, the Shark Week adventures pretty much, And that was quite an adventure.
So when you're down there with sharks, not even the great whites, just like any of the reef sharks, is there? I don't know how to explain this. I'll try to explain it. I remember, I've always been obsessed with skyscrapers ever since I was little. I remember the first time I remember going on the highway and seeing Manhattan. It was the craziest, oh my God, there it actually is. There's the Empire State Building. Granted, King Kong's not real, but it's there it is. I remember the first time I saw Manhattan Island after 9/11, and I was like, there's where this thing happened that changed the world as we know it. I went to DC the first time, seeing the Washington Monument, seeing the White House, and it's just this very odd, we've talked about it, and then you see the thing, and you're like, FDR sat in there. You're like, I'm seeing what he saw on some random day. I can only imagine, and because I'm far too much of a pussy to ever do that, I get scared going into a lake. I can only imagine that there's some sort of...
I'm a certified coward, Dad. Okay.
I can only imagine there's some sort of... You get into the water and you see this thing, and it's this thing that stopped evolving 60 million years ago because it's the perfect killing machine. For all intents and purposes, it's a saltwater dinosaur. Is there some,
Yes. I know exactly where you're going, yes.
Is there that stark... There's the Empire State Building. There's the Washington Monument. Is there just there's death?
Yes, it kind of grips you. I'll tell you when that moment happened. It happened twice.
Okay.
And neither time did I expect it.
Okay.
In Nassau, we pull up to what's called Shark Arena, which is about 60 or 70 miles off the Nassau coast. It's a deep water trench. And we're at the back of the boat. And I'm thinking, okay, we're going to go down. We're going to see a few sharks. Okay, I can handle this. Okay, we pull up, and all of a sudden, the sharks found us first. We're on the boat, and now, because the sharks know that the boats come around, sometimes they have food. So when they hear, maybe I don't know what the cue is. Maybe they hear the boat, whatever it is. All of a sudden, you look up at the boat, and there's 4 or 5 of these large, grayish, black shapes with dorsal fins breaking the surface, circling the boat. And I said to the guy, oh, gee, I guess we can't go down now. He goes, oh, you can go down. Just don't, when you jump in, just don't land on one. I said, okay. But that moment happens when you see the dorsal fins circling the boat. There's 2 parts of your brain. There's the primitive part that's for survival, and then the more advanced part that's thinking,
Yeah, the neocortex.
And what kicks in is the survival part that says, this little voice is saying, stupid. When the sharks are in the water, you don't jump in, you get out. That's what it's telling you.
The reptilian brain.
Exactly. Your logical brain is saying, well, these guys do this every day. It must be safe. So you have this little internal conflict going on. And since there were a lot of ladies there were several ladies on this boat. You don't want to wimp out in front of girls. Let's face it. So I said, okay, I'm going diving. So you go in. The same thing happened. Fast forward 20 years later. Now I'm making this great white shark dive for the first time finally. And we pull up, and we moored off Guadalupe Island in the distance. It looks like something out of the dinosaur age. It's a very stark island. And to get the sharks closer to the boat, in this case, they had to kind of chum. They would use these big 20-pound chunks of tuna on ropes to throw it out there. And now the sharks show up. And it was the same feeling, but amped up by 10 times, because now you don't have a Caribbean shark, you have a great white shark, okay? The dorsal fin is as big as a small boy, okay?
Oh, God.
A small human. And you see these things circling the boat, and their fins are cutting through the water, and they're, rushing for this bait. And you see their teeth, chomping at the bait as they come out of the water to grab the bait. Because the guy's like pulling the fish head out, so the shark's you could do with the shark. So they're jumping out with these mouths agape with these huge, teeth the size of a shot glass, right?
Yeah, I have one.
And you're going, oh my God, that's, wow. And the next thing you do is look at the cage, because we all remember what happened to, what's his name, and Jaws. The cage didn't fare too well, you know? These were pretty sturdy cages. But to your point, again, you get that visceral feeling like, oh my God, what am I about to do?
You're here. You're on the edge, right? It's again, I haven't skydived, but what I imagine is it's the same. The door opens and the green light comes on, and you're like, I am now leaving a perfectly good plane, right? It's so like looking. I was thinking like there's like this beautiful like kind of parallel. I've thought of it before, but it's not until you said it. We've got the neocortex, and that's the whole. Right, that's let's try like heavier than air flight. Let's try to go to the moon. It's like that beautiful. That's what pushes us forward. That's why we're here talking over the internet. And then there's that reptilian. It's almost like we took the devil on one shoulder and the angel on the other shoulder, and we just shifted it towards perpendicular. And it's now you have the angel on the front that's like, hey, like let's take a risk. And then you have the devil in the back that's like, are you just going to be another statistic of 100 million dead humans? Yeah. And I guess you have to kind of roll the dice. So you see something like that there has to be, this visceral, this thing hasn't changed. Like there's this picture that sticks out in my head, and it's not even necessarily special, but I remember looking at it in some biology book in college, and it's just like, the shark is upside down or something, and the only thing sticking out of the water is the bottom half of its mouth. It's a really weird picture. So there's just like this ledge of like skin with these teeth sticking out, and then it's the water. You can't see the rest of it. But it's like a really high resolution photo, and I remember just so many times staring at it, and I was like, this is so... you see like an ape and you're like, oh, that's what we used to be, but you can still kind of see us in it, right? Maybe you go back a little more, you see a monkey and you're like, okay, that's like pre-ape, or, you see a wolf or a bear or a deer, and it's still very like, oh, wow, nature. But there's something about, I remember that photo, and I was like, this is like, I see that, and it's not even like this feeling of ancient or like old human, like pyramid times. I get this feeling of like geologic time. It's like, that's a dinosaur. That's a monster.
Primordial fear. Yes. I do think we have some kind of an inborn fear. Some people have said, they've described it as, we have this fear of being eaten alive.
Yeah.
That's what it is.
Yeah. Well, it's also epigenetic imprinting, right? They think a lot of reasons why we have, like, if you take mice, and they did some study where they took mice and they put them in this lab, and they had like the next generation of mice. It's like, maybe it's not mice, it's something, but they have several generations of mice to where like it's like 9 generations to where none of them have ever been outside this lab. And if they fly over like a cardboard cutout of an eagle, they all run and scamper. And it's like they somehow know, and it's not just an eagle, and they did other shapes and it didn't care, but they did an eagle and they were like, that thing is death.
Right.
There's something imprinted in our minds.
A genetic imprint or a genetic memory that gets passed down.
Yeah. So clearly there's something in there that's been like passed down through like all animals. It's just like shark, water, it's game over, man.
Exactly. Get out.
Yeah. So I'm going to stop running my stupid mouth because I want to hear your story. So back to the great white. So you see the great white, they're yanking the tuna, and it's just like that thing is Satan.
And you're watching this dorsal fin cutting back and forth, and you see the size of the dorsal fin, like it's 3 or 4 feet tall. So you're saying, okay, I'm trying to visualize it, and you can see the entire, the shark is on the surface pretty much. So you can kind of see it's not 10 feet, it's more like 14, 15 feet, and the girth is very, broad, and you realize you're in the presence of something much greater than you are, So it was like, okay, well, this is what we came for. I guess we're going to do this, huh? And the first thing you check is the size of the bars on the cage. That's important, and how they operate, how they're going to run the operation. They had 3 cages, one on each side of the boat, and the side cages could go down to 30 feet if you wanted, or they could stay just at the surface, below the surface, and they had one cage on the stern. And you check the cables. Okay, we have multiple cables. That's good in case the cable snaps and stuff like this. And you're breathing off of what's called a hookah system, which means there's air in the boat being pumped into a tube that you just stick in your mouth, for the regulator. I was relieved to see that there was a tank in the cage also, just in case the worst happened, the worst case scenario, something snaps and the thing goes to the bottom. That you need to grab onto some kind of air supply. That tube isn't that long, so there were cages, there were tanks in the side of the cage for an emergency like that in case they went to the bottom, which didn't happen to anybody. But you look for those little things, little safety devices like that. And when it's your time, you say, okay, you got to go in. Let's go in. That's why we flew across the country. Most of the people from California. There are a few people from the East Coast, like myself and stuff like that. We all came a long way, and between the plane ride, the bus ride, and then the boat ride, which was I didn't count on this aspect. I forgot to mention this. The boat ride from Ensenada, Mexico, to Guadalupe Island is you're going. It's about 200 miles at 20 knots. No, I'm sorry, about 10 knots, 200 miles, 20 hours on a boat over a rolling ocean was going like this.
Oh.
At one point, I was happy to get me in the water with sharks, but that was the worst part of the whole trip. I think
it's not a cruise ship. You're
after all this, we're finally there. It's time to get in the boat in the cage. And when it's your time, you say, okay, I'm going in. And I was relieved to see that they had their safety protocol really, really fixed up pretty well. Mm-hmm. I got in there, and you had your choice of staying near the surface to go. I wanted to go down, so we went down about 20 or 30 feet, and it just hung there for a while, not knowing what we were going to see or how we were going to come face to face with this animal. That was a big thing. And you've read about all the stuff about the counter shading, where they're dark on the top, so you can't see them looking down, and they're lighter on the bottom. So if you're looking up, again, they're a little bit camouflaged.
Perfectly evolved.
So I was wondering what's this going to look like. So I'm staring at now the water here is several hundred feet deep. You're on like a ledge, and then if a little further off the ledge, it goes to 1,000 feet. But with the boats, there's more. It's a couple hundred feet. That's why they need to anchor in the boat so it doesn't it stays in one spot. And you're just looking around. The water's pretty cold. It was about 60, 65 degrees, so we had thick wetsuits on. Some people had dry suits, and had hoods and new gloves to keep you warm down there because you're not really moving around in the cage. And I'm waiting, and I kind of look, my eyes, what is that? Do I see? And you can see a kind of a shape coming out. It's like looking to this gloomy area, looking down into I call it the blue gloom, All of a sudden you see a shape begin to materialize, and then the shape comes closer and closer, and you realize, oh, that's the shark, wow. And you can see how his dark coloring, looking down, you didn't see it at first till he got closer, And he gotten close enough that if you were not aware and you were, you could be fish food because you wouldn't have seen it coming. And they came closer and closer, and then then you finally see the animal. And these are what I would call majestic animals. I mean, they are really pretty impressive. They know they're the boss down there. They're not in no hurry. They're not like looking around fast. They're just very calm, And they have these eyes that just look at you. They stare at you, And he just kind of came up to the cage and looked in and went past the cage, and in your mind you're trying to take this all in and also take pictures at the same time.
Yeah.
And you don't want to keep looking through the viewfinder. You want to actually see it, through your, you have obviously your dive mask on, but you don't want to have your whole trip, looking through a viewfinder.
Yeah.
So you want to be able to experience the whole animal. And we got our experience worth quite a bit. We always had at least a couple of sharks around. And, you just got, sometimes they'd go past the cage, sometimes they'd whack the cage with their tail or something, or they'd try to bump the cage or stuff like this, and that was probably the most exciting thing. And in my situation, the cage bump didn't happen until the last day, but the old time during our trip, you went in 2 or 3 times a day for about an hour each time. And the sharks did not disappoint. We always had sharks. It wasn't a case where there was no sharks around. And the people on the surface cage actually had more action because that's where the sharks were thrashing around, going for the bait and stuff like that. So you actually got better shots there But the deep shots, you got more dramatic shots. You could get the shark above you, so you could take a shot looking up and see the sun silhouetted behind the shark and stuff like this. This is like I actually made I don't know if you can see this. This is one of the shots I took. It came back made a calendar.
Jesus.
And that was one of the with the sun on its back and stuff like that,
Jesus.
I made this calendar for 2020. Thinking back, I'm signing this calendar. I'm giving these calendars out to people. Have a great 2020. I hope 2020 is going to be a great year.
Have a great 2020.
Not knowing we had a pandemic coming, right?
If anything, there's some beauty about that, though, right? You can almost draw an analogy between the great white shark and COVID, right? It's the same thing. Its eyes aren't right. It's not that. What really stuck out to me is it's not that predator, right? I kind of got an image of like a big cat, where it's like it is like the king of the jungle or the king of the plains, but it's still it's sneaking up on you. It's taking its time, A shark is more. It's got this like kind of like Al Capone energy, right? Where it's just walking in and it's like, these are my fucking streets. Like, I'll show up when I want to. I might meet you at 2. If it was doing this podcast, it might do it at 2. It might show up at 5. It doesn't give a fuck.
Whatever it feels like.
It's coming in, and it might interview you. It might not. It doesn't know. You've got an hour. We might go for 5. I don't know. It's just this like, I run the streets. There's almost some analogies between that and COVID. COVID doesn't give it. It's not a hurricane where everyone battens down the hatches. It came in and it was like no Olympics, no March Madness, no nothing. End it. All your vacations are done. I don't give a shit. Excuse my French, but there's maybe some beautiful analogies between that. But so when you see it kind of coming out of like, the murkiness, I mean. That's the last, what you saw is the last thing that like a lot of creatures have ever seen.
Yes, and a lot of creatures don't always see it because sometimes the shark, will stealthily sneak up behind its victim or whatever, and they don't realize it's there until it's too late. Even in most cases when people in the water don't realize it's coming until it's there. So they have this way about them. It's very stealth, and they're very shy animals. I mean, they don't grow this big by being dumb. They don't go for a fisherman's bait all the time. There's a reason why the big ones get so big, because they're a little cautious. And after a while, we look at the shark. They would have these big chunks of tuna on not on a hook, because they didn't want to hook the shark, but it was fastened with like a rope. And if the shark got it, it could take it and rip it and go off and have a nice meal, So the guys doing the chumming would have these, the tuna heads in the air, and they would yank the tuna head out of the way to get the shark to leap for it, so people get good pictures and this and that and everything else. But after a while, we try and you're in the cage and you say, okay, let me see if I can predict when the shark's going to go for it, because the shark would go towards. I'm watching this with my camera ready. I want to get that good tooth shot, right? And interestingly enough, you couldn't predict when the shark was going to make the strike. It would be coming closer and closer and closer. He's going to go. Nope, turned away. Why? I don't know. Comes around again, same exact approach. He's coming. He's going to turn away. Oh, there he goes for it. You just never knew what the shark. Something triggered the shark's decision. I don't know what it was. Maybe he just wasn't ready. Maybe he wasn't sure. Maybe he might have got a glimpse of the rope. I don't know what he saw, but they would come and they would make a decision. They'd come closer and closer and closer, and okay, he's going to go for it. Nope, he didn't go for it. And later on, he'd come back again. Oh, he just went for it. He just never knew what he was going to do.
Well, right. So today is Monday, February 8th, 2021. Yesterday, Tom Brady won his 7th Super Bowl. I don't really watch football. I never really cared, but I am from New England. I love it. I love a Tom Brady, and I've said as much. I love a Tom Brady. I love a Derek Jeter. I love a Michael Jordan. I love a Jeff Bezos, because there's something about just like ruthless masters of a craft that you don't have to like them, but there's something that I just like. You don't even have to have respect for. You don't have voluntary respect for.
I call it the alpha personality.
Yeah,
It could be an alpha male or an alpha female, but it's that alpha personality.
That apex predator where it's not that you have to show respect for them or that you have respect for them. It's involuntary respect. It's like a sneeze.
Yeah.
When you walk out into the sun, you're like, there's the best. I was thinking, like, you don't get that way by accident, right? It's like to get to the Super Bowl or something. It's like I didn't watch a single second of the game, but like if you're going to do a fake field goal, you do 1,000 normal field goals first, right?
Right.
And then the fake comes, and there's a reason why it's a fake. Oh, it's a surprise! It's the same thing. It's the shark. You don't know what it saw, but just like the Bill Belichick or the Tom Brady or whoever, just like they see one chink in the armor and they go, flip it, we got a touchdown. Yep. To you and me, we're like, why did they decide at that time? But that's why you and I are in the stands and not holding the Lombardi trophy. Yep. But the great white, who knows? Did it see one photon hit the fishing line? Mm-hmm. And something in its brain said, nope,
Yep.
Jesus.
They are curious and they are cautious. They're not reckless, they're cautious.
Yeah.
They will take what they want in their own time. Now, what triggers that decision, not really sure. Like, there could be a number of things like you just enumerated, but there is something going on in the brain. It's not a stupid brain.
No, and I could be wrong. Maybe I'm fake news. Somebody fact check me. But I thought I remember reading years ago that they have stopped evolving because they've hit the pinnacle of perfection. The way their fins are shaped to where they have to expend minimal energy to move. I mean, or bigger things, dark on the top looking down, light on the bottom looking up. Mm-hmm. I mean, the world's always changing, so I'm sure you could argue genetically there is still evolution going on. But, like, you don't get there by accident. You don't get that big by accident. So they have been selected. I mean, there are some off the coast of New England that they say are older than the United States. 300 to 400 years old. These things are.
I don't know if sharks live that long.
I think there's like one or two that they've tagged. I'll look it up.
Could be. I mean, it could be.
This isn't some like point I'm passionate about. I'm not like I'm going to argue this.
No, I'm not an expert myself in that, but I do know that whales, for example, they caught a whale up in Alaska somewhere, like a bowhead or whatever they hunt up there, the Native Americans or the indigenous people of the Northwest there, and because they're allowed to hunt whales for subsistence, and they recovered a harpoon in the whale.
Jesus Christ!
And they dug out the harpoon, and they looked at it and examined it, and they realized the harpoon was over 100 years old. It had been, this whale had been struck in the era of Yankee whaling back in the 1800s, and it was still around.
The Greenland sharks.
Oh, Greenland sharks, okay.
Yeah, so not great white, I was wrong. Greenland sharks, a little over 400 years old. One is a 392-year-old one they found in 2020. Okay, so these are exceptions. These aren't the norm. All right.
Well, that's a different species, and that particular species is a very, very deep water, very slow-moving shark.
Okay.
So there could be some correlation to the fact that it, doesn't run around, like a speed merchant. Yeah. It's just conserving its energy. It does what it does. No other predators down there. Humans don't fish for these things. Mm-hmm. They can't fish them. They're too deep. And very well could be, That's
they're like a Keith Richards shark as opposed to like a Jimi Hendrix or fast and young, just like that, live for the moment. But so seeing these things, and they kind of now, did you like within the sharks? Was there any like clear relationship? Was there one that was the alpha amongst the sharks, or are they all kind of?
Oh yeah, and it showed up on the very last day.
Oh shit!
It was this. We were in the show. It was my last dive of the day, and we were getting ready to leave by the middle of the day. They wanted to get on their way, and we had seen some big sharks. We saw 15 foot. I mean, 15, 16 foot. These are big sharks, And then on the cage the last day, two other ladies were in with me. And they had their cameras. They were very good photographers, and we're all taking shots. And all of a sudden, this very, very big female shark shows up. And this thing was like an oh my God shark. It was like, later on I heard that people knew about this shark. There are certain identifiers on the shark. Besides body markings, there's also maybe fins are clipped off, or there's some other identifiers. And they keep a catalog of these things, so they know which ones show up when and stuff like that. And this thing was huge. Besides being like almost 20 feet, it was probably 18-foot range around there. It was very, very big. It was huge. And this is the one, I won't forget this, Ari. We saw it coming up and around, and one of the ladies in front of me was taking a picture of it swinging past another cage, and it came towards our cage, and I said, well, now I'm going to get a great shot. And I got my camera kind of ready. I'm going to get this shot. And all of a sudden, as it approached us, the shark swerved into our cage and banged us, knocked me on my ass. So the shot I got wasn't the greatest shot in the world photographically. It wasn't, because I was like going back like this, on my butt. And it hit the cage. You feel the force of this body hitting the cage. These cages are not small. They were a good, I would say, almost 10 feet long, and obviously taller than a human, maybe 6.5 feet high, about 4 feet wide. They were heavy. And this thing banged into the cage like it was nothing. We got knocked back. I was on the floor, And after it did that, I didn't know what it was going to do. It just kind of like turned and began swimming away. And after the experience, we were talking to the boat crew, and they said, oh, yeah, there was a name for the shark. I forget what the hell they called it. But they said, oh, we've seen her around. Yeah, we were waiting for her to show up. And it wasn't great blue or deep blue. There's a big shark called deep blue or something like that. It wasn't that one. That's a kind of a famous shark. But it was clearly, when that shark showed up, there was no other sharks around.
Oh shit!
It was like, okay, this is my thing, you guys. You guys take off for a while,
Oh shit!
And it was quite the moment. That made the whole trip worthwhile. Getting smashed like that by this huge shark, and then watching it just kind of swim away, and getting some kind of a photo anyway out of it was totally phenomenal.
Do you think the shark is in cahoots with the agency that does the vacation? You show up on the last day, put on a show, bang these people around. They
got an extra tuna.
Yeah, I was about to say, you get an extra. You show back up at the docks at midnight. You'll get your payment as always.
Yeah, but it was quite an experience. Yeah.
Yeah, there's got to be something even more, no pun intended, jarring about being hit by the cage. Is you get to actually like feel like one of my friends has a pit bull, and I remember and it was the nicest dog ever. But whenever I'd go to like his house, and it was on several occasions, and I'd see it. It's the biggest, just dumb, fluffy, like comes up licking you and you're petting it. But like any dog, I just like to hug it because it's just, it's just the cuddliest thing in the world. And it would lick you and stuff. But I realized whenever it wanted to leave, and it's not that I was holding on to it, but one thing I noted is like when it decided that it was going to go look out the window and bark at a bird or go to the doorbell, it wasn't like, okay, I'm getting up now. It was leaving regardless if I was trying to hold on to it. It was just like this massive muscle and bone that was just like, and I'm out. And it was like, I'm not in control of that. And I got this like, although it never once even growled, never once even showed its teeth, I was like, oh, this is in charge of its own domain. I feel like you more so than the fact that, oh my God, there's a shark, just kind of, one, the other shark's leaving, again, sort of that Al Capone energy. But then also, it just hits the cage and knocks you over, and it's just like, oh, this is just, fuck your cage. I don't care.
It gave you a feeling of the power of the animal.
Yeah.
And without actually seeing it. And I got another glimpse of that early in the week when I was in the side cage and I was taking pictures of a shark that was approaching the cage in the back of the boat. And this was another pretty big one. And 2 or 3 guys in that one, and they were shooting whatever. And this big shark came around, and it got annoyed by something. Either it couldn't get the bait, whatever. So as it was passing that shark, that particular cage, it started wailing its fin back and forth, its caudal fin, rear fin. And you could see the ocean was now stirred up, and the cage was like bouncing back and forth like there were little kids in there, And it gave you an idea of just how powerful these animals are. And it was quite an impressive display, even though it wasn't trying to put a display on. It was just a nature moment that was happening. This animal, for whatever reason, was annoyed enough to really slash that cage around and bounce it around and whatever ticked it off, then it's turn around and swim away. But when you see those kinds of displays of power, you realize how minimal we are, and compared to some of these natural animals.
It's there, right? It's weird how the world is almost like divided in half. Like, we look at any animal on the surface, a lion or a polar bear. Sure, they're big, bad, and crazy, but it's also like we are the apex predator of the surface. If we really want, a camper going out there, sure, you're going to get eaten. But I mean, if humans ever really want to even put half a minute of energy into it, we would roll into northern Alaska in a convoy of M1 Abrams tanks, and we would just burn it down. Like, we just do whatever we want. The ocean that's their dimension.
Your comment about being a polar bear or another animal sparks a memory. If you want to switch gears for a second, talk about humpback whales.
Sure.
Okay, that's another adventure I had done several years earlier. Was free diving and snorkeling with humpback whales off the Dominican Republic. I had been on a trip to Bonaire. It's one of the ABC islands. You have Aruba, Bonaire, Curacao, those 3 islands. So I was having dinner with some diver who had a whale tail around a neck. So I wanted to make conversation. I said, "Oh, you swim with humpback? You like humpback whales?" And she goes, "Oh, I swim with them every year." I said, "You do what? With who?" And she goes, "I swim with humpback." I said, "Where? I thought you couldn't do this, And it's, "Oh yeah, in the Dominican Republic, you can do this, And she gave me all the information and stuff like this. It's a whale sanctuary down there. Dominican Republic, the government is in charge of the whole operation, as far as controlling the operation for operators to go down there. So I said, "Wow, that's something I really always thought about doing." So, year later, I'm on a plane down to the Dominican Republic to Puerto Plata, get on another liveaboard boat, and we go out to a place called the Silverbank. And it's called the Silverbank because during the years of piracy and bringing all the gold and silver back from the old world, from the new world to the old world, they didn't have GPS, they didn't have sonar and stuff like that. So many of them hit a lot of the reefs during hurricanes and stuff and spill their cargo all over this area because it's a relatively shallow area of the ocean, only a couple hundred feet deep, maybe or less. And so it became known as the Silverbank because all the treasure was down there. Mm. So most of it's been recovered, I've heard. So we didn't see any treasure. But this is where humpback whales that we see up in the north, they snowbird down to these areas to give birth and mate and have, because there are some coral reefs in the area that kind of give it a protected setting so they can have their young or whatever, And so I was down there to get in the water with humpback whales. This was not a cage. This was like snorkeling, and if you could dive, free diving without a tanker and like that, whatever. So, getting back to what your comment there, the difference between whales and sharks is the degree of intelligence. You look a shark in the eye, it's kind of a cold, dead eye, and it's the thought process is you were either food, or a threat, or part of the background. That's about it. Whales, you look in these eyes, okay, and you see intelligence. It's an intelligent mammal with a brain bigger than ours, right? Mm-hmm. And they're looking at you, and you could tell while you're assessing it, it's assessing you, not just as food or something like that, because they don't eat when they're down there. But they're kind of like checking you out, wondering what you are and stuff like this, and you can feel almost like an exchange of intelligence. Like, I'm looking at you, you're looking at me, I'm looking at you, you're looking at me, I'm looking at you, And so it's quite the experience. So they have they have their babies down there, okay? And, they get pregnant down there, and then a year later they go up in the summertime to the north, come down and again in the wintertime and give birth. So the gestation period is a little over a year, I guess. Mm-hmm. So, they have the babies are born. Babies are about 10 feet big. Whales are about 50 feet big, And for the babies, the whales have seen humans before because they're down there. The humans there's several boats that are allowed to go down there and stuff like this. So it's like, oh, the humans are here again. Okay, yeah, right, okay. But for the baby whales, that's the first time seeing human beings, so they're very curious. Mm. So one baby whale came right by me. This is actually a picture of one of my books. I took that shot. It's a baby humpback, and he came as close as within 10 feet of me. And I'm taking pictures. This is fabulous! Wow, a baby whale! Look at this! Well, the whale's kind of curious, kind of put the peck fin out, kind of like maybe brush you a little bit, see what you're made of, whatever. I look back, and here comes Mom. And I'm going, oh, maybe this wasn't a good idea. Because to your point, you wouldn't get close to a bear cub or a lion cub or any kind of cub.
Very true.
Otherwise, you're toast, right?
Mama bear. Yeah.
So now I'm saying, okay, here comes the whale. What's going to happen now? I was near its baby. What is she thinking? There's 50-foot whales coming closer and closer and closer and closer. And I'm going, oh, God. But I actually took a picture of the whale as it was coming. I figured, well, it might be my last photo. I don't know. So now it has its pec fins are kind of out, stretched out. And the pectoral fins are almost 10 feet long on either side of them, okay? And as she got us within 10 feet of me, okay, they have to figure this is a huge animal, right? She begins turning to go past me. Now, if her pec fin was out, she would have just smashed me. I would have been broken in two. The pec fins. You've seen them when they do these smashing these fins down to the side.
It'd be like if a small plane hit you.
But as she brushed past me, she took her fin and put it like this beside her body, so she slid past without hitting me with her fin. And I'm looking at that and said, wow, she knew that I was there. She knew where her fin was. And after kind of examining me and seeing me hanging out with the kid for a while, she just slid right past, put her fin next to her body, and slid right past me. And, it was like an oh my God moment again, And when I surfaced to get back in the boat, because the encounters last only as long as the whales want to hang out. You're going around for maybe an hour looking for a couple of whales. You find the whales, you jump in the boat, as long as the whales aren't doing something like, breaching or whatever, And when the whales get bored or tired, they leave. You can't chase them. They're gone. That's it. Get back in the boat. So we get back in the boat, and I told this to the boat driver. I said, "You know what happened to me?" I thought he was going to be shocked or surprised. He goes, "Oh, really? Yeah, they do that a lot. Yeah, that's as long as you're not doing something like trying to go after the baby or something like that, they'll do that." And it was like, wow, So other times. I was, it was actually just kind of a fast forward or reverse. The first time I got in the water with a whale, we're in these little boats, like little dinghies we're in, really, off the mother boat to find these whales. And the guy goes, okay, there's a whale on the bottom, everybody over. So we jump over. I'm trying to look, where's the whale? Then the bottom began to move. I realized, that was the whale. These things up, right? Okay? So the whales, we're about 50 feet of water. The whale circles and begins to come up. I'm going, this is pretty good. I'm taking pictures and stuff. And now the whale's going beneath me. I'm snorkeling at the surface. The whale's maybe 10, 15 feet down, less than that. And as it slides past me, I'm trying to take in all the details. There's the blowhole. That's pretty cool. Wow, there's the dorsal fin. That's pretty cool. I look back and I see its big tail fluke, right? That's how it's swimming. It's propelling itself with its tail fluke, right? Hits the surface down. Hits the surface down. I'm saying 2 more strokes, I'm going to be toast, because the tail fluke is so strong. When you see a whale breach, okay, it's that tail fluke that's propelling a 50-ton whale out of the water. And that's how strong these things are. So I'm looking at this tail going up and down, pushing the whale along. And I was going, uh-oh. So I crossed my arms over my chest thinking I'm going to get smashed. As the whale passed beneath me, on the upstroke, it held its tail fluke and it slid past. Like it knew where I was in relation to its body and stopped its tail fluke until it passed, and it kept on going. Again, I got back in the boat and I said, did you see that? Did you see what the whale did? The guy goes, oh yeah, they'll do that if they know you're there. They'll take, as long as, the biggest risk is that they don't know you're there.
Yeah.
And it's like, somebody in a drunk in a room doesn't know you're there.
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
But if they knew where you were in no danger, because they would take great pains, these huge animals, not to hurt us.
Yeah.
So it was absolutely amazing.
It's that is it's definitive intelligence.
Yes.
And it's kind of funny. The shark, food, threat, background. It's just very dun, right? It's almost like a generalized analogy, but it's almost like a military bomber in like World War II. Target, threat, or just like that's a hill. There's really not a whole lot of thought, and I'm not disparaging the military, but I'm just thinking of like World War II mass bombings. Right. It's very kill that, run away from that, keep flying. Versus a whale, it seems it's more like a Delta Force mission, right? It's like target, captive, civilians, roof, floor. It's very specialized, intelligent.
There's a different kind of intelligence going on. You can see it. You can see it in their eyes.
Yeah.
So when you make eye contact with a whale, if you're that close, this eye is looking at you with feeling and intelligence that a shark doesn't have. A shark has intelligence, but it's a different kind of intelligence. A whale, and then there's some debate. Are they more intelligent than we are? Well, sometimes I think so. But there is an intelligence there, and it's an amazing thing to be in the presence of something that huge and that powerful that doesn't want to hurt you, but allows you to live by it, exist by it. Is kind of awe-inspiring.
Now, is there... Yeah, right? It's kind of... I mean, maybe not a good analogy, but I don't know, maybe like a dog. I mean, I think of my dog, put down last year, but he was 17. And it's like you had him for so long that sometimes sometimes he would kind of wake up from his ninth nap of the day, and he was, he's mostly blind, but he'd look over at me, and
what kind of dog is it?
He was a toy poodle.
Okay.
Yeah, he was 17 and a half. I mean, by the end, he was blind and deaf. He was crazy. He was awesome. I loved him. But sometimes he would wake up from his nap and he'd look over just to make sure you're still there. But he'd kind of look at me, and it's sometimes I would look up at him, and it's we would just kind of look at each other, and it wasn't I'm giving him a treat. It's not like he's going outside now. It was sometimes we would just kind of look at each other, and he would look at me, and he would just kind of put his head back down. It was just this general I see you. What's up? That's kind of right. I feel like that's almost. I feel like a shark is probably a little more I'm 30 years old, but I act like a retard sometimes. I see a duck next to a pond, and I'm I go towards the duck, and it runs away, and it's oh man, and that's kind of all there is. Do I have bread or do I not? It's gonna run away. Whereas a dog kind of looks at you, and there's a little bit of acknowledgement. I feel like that's kind of what you're saying with the whale.
It's a different level of consciousness. For example, mammals will play. Dogs will play for the fun of playing. Dolphins play for the fun. Playing is according to scientists, playfulness is a sign of higher intelligence because they do something because it's fun. You watch dolphins sometimes surfing in the surf. They do it because it's fun. Sharks don't play; they're out there to exist. Every day is a job. I got to get up. I got to go eat. I got to stay alive. Until the next day. Yeah, that's what their life is like.
Sharks are the working man, and dolphins and whales are the really rich people, right? I thought it was fun. It was a great idea. I decided I'm going to buy a jet. Yeah, but really it is, right? Because it's the expenditure of caloric energy there is no ends to it. There's no goal. Maybe it's a sign of intelligent. Maybe nihilism is a sign of intelligence because it's sort of let's play. It's it's all nothing matters. Let's play, right? Yeah. So it's kind of sea life intelligence. I don't know how it stratifies. Yeah. Now, is there any sort of? So it's okay, these things are intelligent. They move the fin. They move the tail. So you obviously don't have that, and then there's the neocortex, right? Of I know that a whale is not trying to eat me. So there's all these things kind of coming together. But is there still just a general, that is a 50-ton moving mass, no different than a locomotive engine?
You realize, well, it's different because it's intelligent, but you're right. It's not like you realize when you're in the water next to something like this. It's living and it's breathing. It's not like an animated prop. You go to SeaWorld or something. You can stand next to a 50-foot whale on an imitation whale somewhere at an amusement park or something, right? Mm-hmm. And that's it. Okay, it's something that's 50 feet long and it's there. When you're next to a whale, besides the fact that it's moving, you hear it breathing.
Oh, shit.
It comes up. Again, one time I was in the South Pacific in a place called Tonga, South Pacific, to go with humpback whales again, a different trip. And I was there, and I was, watching whales and stuff like this. And I was all of a sudden, I'm at the surface, I'm getting rocked like this. I said, what is going on? And a whale surfaced right next to me. I didn't even see it coming. It came up from behind me and below me. And this huge whale just is there, okay? And he's swimming with me. he's there next to me, and he's breathing, and he exhales, and then he inhales. So you feel this life force energy.
Oh,
it's when a human breathes. Yeah. If a person's dead, they're not breathing. Yeah. When they breathe, it's life, okay?
Yeah.
So this whale, on a massive scale, because their lungs are the size of cars, and they have to, get all this air out and get more air in quickly, you feel this rushing of air, exhaling and inhaling. It's a living, breathing thing. And this whale comes up to me, not up to me, but you have to be right next to me. I'm the one kind of got in his way. It's like, he probably started, what the hell's next to me? And then he started swimming, and I said, I'm going to try and keep up with this thing. So I started swimming too. And inside of like a few seconds, I realized this whale is letting me swim along with it. Yeah. And I'm swimming in the water, not with a whale just kind of like floating there. He's actually moving through the water a lot easier than I was. He was just one stroke of his tail would take me like 20 strokes of my fins to try and keep up. Right? Yeah. So we're there for about, I would say, 20 seconds, maybe 30 seconds at the most, and I'm taking some shots, and he's keeping up with me and stuff. I'm keeping up with him until he got bored. And then he just finally put his head down and dove and just headed down away. You can't keep up with him, But, to your point, you get this feeling of a huge living thing next to you, breathing. Its heart's pumping. It's moving. It's like you feel minute. You don't just feel like 5 or 6 feet next to 60 feet. You feel smaller than that. Yeah.
I'm kind of at a loss for words for that. Have you ever completely changed directions? You good for going like 10 more minutes?
Yeah,
we'll wrap this up. I would love to have you on again sometime.
Okay.
Have you ever read about the megalodon?
Yes.
What are your? I'm not really sure what kind of answer I'm looking for. Like, what am I asking? Like, the megalodon exists.
Do they still exist?
No. I wish they did. I would love to go down that conspiracy hole. No, I don't think they do. I think it's probably 100% that they do not. But we do know that they existed.
Yes.
And they think that they could go anywhere from like 35 to 65 feet on the upper end.
Yeah.
As someone that's seen great white sharks and has seen whales, how do you take from the earlier part of this podcast that general Al Capone energy, cold, lifeless eyes, they're going to kill you, they sneak up, they're in charge, and then you mix it with that 60-foot breathing monster underwater that's going by you? Can your brain I know mine can't, but as someone that has seen both of them and has explained it as such, can you even really begin to comprehend like that first thing that we described, the shark, but scale it up to the second thing, the whale?
I scale it up, but not in the same way. In other words, if the whale was if the shark was the size of the whale, you're talking about two different sizes, the great white and the megalodon, it would be like, Al Capone on steroids, So, like, but they don't, the size itself isn't a comparison because there's this difference in intelligence and personality and stuff like that, But, so there's that difference. But just to get back to your point about do they still exist? I kind of would like to believe they do, okay? But here's a food for thought. You know how they put these little tracking devices in sharks? Mm-hmm. They what they'll do is they'll clip a little transmitter onto the dorsal fin. Yeah. And now they give the shark a name, and you can go on a website and say, oh, shark A53, or they give it a name, as Alice, is now going down past the Carolinas, going to Florida and stuff like that, right? So they put one on this huge shark, and all of a sudden one day, the shark stopped beeping, and later on, they got a sonar thing of something much larger than that shark that was beeping. The same transmitter was beeping, okay? But the thing was, it was much larger than that shark. We're only talking like 3 or 4 years ago. This is pretty recent. So what they're saying is, holy shit, something ate that shark transmitter, and now it's transmitting, they're getting a reading from the stomach or something like this. I don't know. So it was kind of like, okay, maybe there is something down in the Marianas Trench or something like this.
Don't play with my heart. That's what I love to imagine. Is I'm like, where would it be? It would be in the Marianas Trench. And there's that one section of the Marianas Trench, Challenger Deep, That's like,
There are things down there we don't know about.
Well, right?
If there's no reason for it, if it's got a sufficient food supply,
why would it come up?
Why would it come up? If it's able to feast on maybe dead whales as they fall to the bottom and stuff like this, or whatever's down the bottom, you know?
Yeah, or all those like angler fish or whatever the hell are down there that produce their own, like, seafloor life is like, I mean, that's what I imagine like interplanetary life is like, just alien. But yeah, if you were down there, right, and we know whatever the PSI is of pressure, like, no one can go down there. Like, we sent that one ship down there. I think it was like the Bathurst or something.
Yeah, the Trieste or Bath.
Yeah,
the Bathysphere.
Bathysphere, yeah. There's a really good book called Blind Man's Bluff, all about like nuclear subs and shit. And I always thought they just went a couple 100 feet deep, and I think they all do. But there was like one or two that we built these. They were originally research subs that we like outfitted, and of course during the Cold War, all the money was flowing. But they made these ones that would go down to the ocean floor, and they had these big mechanical. They said they almost looked like crawfish, but they had, this isn't like the 70s. They had these like mechanical crawfish that would leave the submarine, and they would be at 25,000 feet below the surface, and that's where they would go to. There's obviously the famous story of the Soviet sub that we tried to lift up, and that's kind of a
Howard Hughes.
Yeah, Howard Hughes. Yeah, they had him go out there as a cover story. James Cameron, didn't they end up paying for his like Titanic research, because what he was actually doing was helping salvage some like Soviet Union era shit.
I didn't know that.
Yeah. No, that's where the Glomar response comes from. We can neither confirm nor deny. It's from the USS Glomar, which was like a research ship. So it's the Glomar response. We can neither confirm nor deny. They wanted us to lift one up, but those are all kind of a little more well-known stories. The story that I had never known was that we would actually go down and try to find not just subs, but maybe Soviet battleships, maybe Soviet aircraft that maybe, you know, we want to go down there and try to pry apart their avionics. And we had this one, I think maybe two submarines that were purpose-built for the things that crashed out in the middle of nowhere. So we'd go down to like 30,000 feet. They had these long cables that would connect them, and I think they called it like the Bat Cave. They had like a hollowed out part of a sub where they would go in and they would be like controlling it's stuff from like the 60s and 70s that you realize you're like, this is James Bond, Tom Clancy shit. But yeah, that being said, it takes like the full force of the U.S. military and the intelligence community with the funding of a Cold War president and the fear of a Cold War conflict just to get down there and look at a tiny slice of the ocean floor. Right. We know that we've only discovered, something like 5 to 10%. So I say all of that to say, if there was this beast, why the hell would it come up?
Doesn't have to.
Doesn't have to.
No, because there's more stuff that falls to the bottom of the ocean. All life falls to the bottom of the ocean eventually.
Well,
that's why they find. I was watching a YouTube video just recently. Somebody sent me of all kinds of I forget if it was squid or something feasting on the remains of a dead whale that's fallen like several thousand feet. But it's just not the big stuff to fall. I mean, everything in the ocean that dies, eventually gravity just takes it down until there's a coating of the stuff. That's why you find these marine worms eat this stuff and everything else, you know. But if there's a food source, you know, why go all the way up to the surface? You hang out down there. It's perfectly fine.
Well, yeah, I mean, not even from an intelligence standpoint of why go up to the surface where we might get killed by humans, but just like a caloric, right? The difference between work and play. Why would I expend all these calories swimming 5 miles vertically when I can just go? Because, we know there are thermal vents at the bottom of the ocean, and we know that those feed and drive the production of extremophile bacteria, right? Cyanobacteria, sulfur bacteria. We know they exist down there. We know there is life down there. And yeah, I think it's called a whale fall, and it's where a carcass falls. And it's like and it takes several days, I think. Maybe I'm wrong. It might be a couple hours. But yeah, it hits the bottom, and there's like videos, and they're really terrifying videos, but it's like time-lapse videos of like crabs coming in, like eating it, and it's just, but it's also at the same time it's almost kind of cheesy, but it's the whole circle of life thing. It's you're like, oh wow, you know, it's terrifying, but you're like, I see how it works. If you have all those things down there, why would you leave?
There's a lot we don't know yet.
There's a lot we're mapping other planets, but not our ocean floor.
Not our own.
I love to think I kind of steered from it earlier because I don't want to come across as the crazy conspiracy theorist that I am, because I have a weak spot. I have a weak spot for those. Those are my I don't read like Harry Potter or Lord of the Rings, but like, man, do I love a good conspiracy. It's
I mean, that to me, that's
it's the spice.
Pretty amazing stuff. I mean, I'm still wondering about what happened at Roswell.
Oh, and, dude, don't even
what they're hiding at Area 51.
My friend, I have had so many episodes. Actually, after this, I don't know if he's going to cancel or not. I'm having on Larry Holcomb, who's come on here several times, author of Presidents and UFOs.
Okay.
That is a great book on UFOs.
That's the one thing I always say. If you were president, what would you do? What's the first thing you would do? Would you solve poverty? No. I want to find out what's there in 51.
Yes, thank you. My God, I think we just became best friends. Yes, I don't give a shit. Yeah, foreign policy, I don't care. Nuke the Middle East. What are we doing at home? Give everyone stimulus checks. I don't give a shit. Take me on a direct flight to Roswell, New Mexico, and then Groom Lake. I want to see what's out there. Get me Bob Lazar on the phone. Mm-hmm. I want to know about UFOs. Dig up all the shit that Curtis LeMay said. You have all these weird quotes from Harry S. Truman, flying saucers, given that they exist, were not created by any power on Earth.
Here's in that vein, if you have a minute, to talk about. Remember for a while, all these stories about alien abductions were going on, and people had lost time and stuff like this. And there was the story of Betty and Barney Hill. Remember that one? Mm-hmm. The couple were in the car, and they were all of a sudden, they saw a bright light, and they woke up like 8 hours later or something like that. Under hypnosis, okay? She described being examined by these beings, okay? And she was talking about then they would say, well, what kind of examination? And she talked about them putting some kind of a long spear-like tube, or needle, whatever, into her abdomen, something like that. And they go, why did they do that? She goes, they wanted to see if I was pregnant. And people were going, ladies, whatever. Well, 5 or 10 years later, we invented the test for amniocentesis, where they do that process, where they use a tube and now they can determine if you're pregnant or what the sex of your baby is and stuff like that. That's how they do it. They insert like a long needle, withdraw some amniotic fluid, and they can tell what the baby is. Okay, and she's describing a process that didn't happen for another 20 years. Jesus
Christ! I mean, what about Bob Lazar? Right? Everyone points to what Bob Lazar said about element 115. And how he talked about it, said that's the power source, and then years later we discovered element 115. I love Bob Lazar, but to me that doesn't really hold any weight, because I think physicists have theorized that up to element 5000 are theoretically possible. Whether or not they exist naturally is a whole other thing. So to me, I don't look at the prediction of an element. I could say element 159 is going to be predicted or it's going to be discovered one day, and it is. What I point to is what he described in 1989 about the way the way this craft would move, and he was like, it's not in the traditional sense where you push something at the back, rocket fuel, exhaust, whatever, ramjet, scramjet, all that stuff.
Action reaction, right?
Yeah, he said it was completely different in the sense of like it's when you put like a bowling ball on a mattress and stuff falls towards it. What this craft did, what he called the sport model, he said it created a gravitational distortion in front of it so that it was always falling downhill. And the way it would do that, and furthermore, is it wasn't just a flying saucer moving around like this. He said that's how it moved around on Earth. But when it would do like interstellar travel, it would, and I'm sure most of the people listening to this podcast have exited out by now, but when it would go to do interstellar, interstellar travel, it would turn up like that, and it would use the bottom to create the downhill force, and it would move like that. So it's, we see the flying saucers moving like this, but when it's out in space, what it actually does is move like that.
Okay.
Well, in 2004, there was the sighting of the Tic Tac off the USS Nimitz. Have you ever heard of that one? The USS Nimitz Tic Tac, Commander Fravor.
Was it the guys that kept going all over the place?
There's like one. It looked like a Tic Tac, and it's the guy who spotted it was Commander Fravor, who was a commander of a squadron of fighter jets. This guy was way up there. On 9/11/2001, they tasked his force to fly above L.A. because they didn't know if another attack was coming. This guy went on Joe Rogan, and he also went on Lex Friedman. Those are two great. I'll text them to you. If you're into UFOs, you should, because that is a credible. This dude was as clean cut American as you can get, and he's describing this thing. But so last year, in of course 2020, mid 2020, the Pentagon finally released the FLIR, the forward-looking infrared video of, the Tic Tac, but also another one off the East Coast. So the Tic Tac was 2004 off the West Coast, kind of around San Diego-ish, probably where you were. But the East Coast one, they called it the Gimbal, because there's a declassified video. You can look it up, just YouTube, Gimbal UFO. And you hear these two, like, fighter bros, they're like, look at that thing, man, look at that thing. And it's the infrared shot, kind of grayish. And it's moving around, and they're like, look at that, it's a drone. And then all of a sudden, as it's flying, and mind you, it's moving at like 150 knots. It goes like this, perfectly on the same plane, but it moves like that. And you go, oh, holy shit. But it moved like a gimbal. It moved exactly like Bob Lazar said it did. So I don't look at element 115 as the predictor of that. I look at that declassified and certified Pentagon video of that thing going on a pivot. Yeah. So screw the Megalodon. Take me out to Groom Lake. Show it to me. You don't have to tell me, hey, if I start running my mouth, you can JFK me, but just show me. All right, that's what I want to see. But so yeah, Megalodon. So we'll finish this podcast as just sharks with a little bit of UFOs. Okay. I would love to have you on and we can talk UFOs. That would be a great episode.
Okay, yeah, I'm not as well. I've studied it for a long time, but I couldn't say I've never seen one. I'm not probably as the expert as some people are, but it's a great topic.
Nobody's an expert. Anyone talking about it, like myself, admittedly, is just pulling together the facts that we can see and trying to make sense of it. All else is speculation. So I can't claim to know anything, but man. I haven't talked about them in a while, but I would say like every 5th episode for the first 100 episodes are about UFOs. But to me, there's just nothing sexier. Advanced intelligence, advanced metamaterials, displaying laws of physics that we don't know, visiting Earth. To me, what's bigger than that is...
I still believe that the alien body is still over at that hangar.
Why? It makes perfect sense as to why we wouldn't disclose it. And... I'll have to wrap this up in 5 minutes, because if I don't, I'm never going to shut up. But I think about that. Why would there be alien bodies? Why would there be craft? And it's the general kind of explanation we've always heard through the years, that if it did happen, people always say, well, they couldn't tell the people because the people would freak out. I think that's a bullshit explanation. I think there's a very real explanation. And all you have to do is look at the secrecy around the atomic bomb. When it started, only 3 people in the world knew. It was FDR, it was General Leslie Groves, and I think it was Oppenheimer. It might have been Leo Szilard. No one else knew, not even Truman. Truman didn't know about the A-bomb until 3 days into his presidency.
Right, until FDR died, yes.
And it was called Operation S1. Before it was the Manhattan Project, or called Project S1. But only 3 people knew about it, and it was so secretive because they knew, and they were right, this could end the war, and it did end the war. It was kept so secret. I mean, other things, stealth technology. We were going to use the F-117 to go bomb Gaddafi, and then Secretary of Defense Caspar Weinberger under Reagan called off the F-117 at the last minute and said, go send in a different fighter jet. The different fighter jets went in. They literally made too much noise. Gaddafi got away, and years later, when asked, why the hell did you do that? He said, although Gaddafi was an important target, there's a bigger fish to fry, and that was not letting the Soviets know that we have stealth technology. It was, hey, we're going to lose the battle so we can win the war. So there are these examples of hyper-advanced technologies, atomic weaponry, stealth technology, that we don't want anyone to know, because just like the sharks in the ocean, where it's very primal, big boy wins. Just like cavemen, the first one to get the bow, the first one to invent the gunpowder-driven rifle. Whoever has the best technology wins.
That's right.
Atomic bomb, stealth technology. So I say all of that to say, if we recovered a piece of technology in 1947, why would we let anyone know about it? It is the ultimate, it's the arrow, it's the sword, it's the, why would we let anyone know about it? We would keep it secret, and we would work on it, because whoever controls that controls the world. Yeah,
reverse technology, reverse engineer.
Yes, so why would we say anything to anyone? We wouldn't. We could dress it up as the people can't know. It would destabilize religion. Sure, that's a good soundbite. But that is a weapon. Despite all of at least my flowery and idyllic ideas of humanity, the reality is we're just a bunch of apes with weapons, and whoever has the best weapons gets the nicest home with the best food and the best women. That's what we are. We can call it anything else, but we just so happen this just means we have the best weapons.
Remember the opening scenes of 2001: A Space Odyssey?
Yes. Bum,
and then they figured out through this bone.
Dun 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 dun. That's what it is. But it's instead of a club, it's just a disc, and it's who knows what that entails. And have we finally reverse engineered it? Is that it? Is that what these UFO sightings are in the last year or so that the Pentagon has been releasing? Is this a slow kind of releasing it? Hey, we're in charge now. I mean, right? You have belligerent China moving on Taiwan and in the South China Sea. Maybe we start having UFO sightings. It's, hey.
Hopefully we find it before they do.
That's what I'm saying. Is it a China? Or if 73 years ago, it would be what happens if a Stalin finds it, right? Or if it's 10 years before that, what happens if a Hitler finds it? I don't know. Who knows? You know what? I will say I was upset that Trump didn't tweet about Area 51 not once. To me, I'm like, hey, that's what I kept saying. I was like, no matter what, we're going to get it from him. Not once. And you know what? That was a little heartbreaking. I don't give a shit about anything else he did. He didn't tweet about Area 50. But maybe that's just how much power is out there. Fun fact, and then I'll let you go.
Okay.
But did you know that Eisenhower wanted a briefing about what was going on at Groom Lake when he was president? And he was denied access. And so he threatened Groom Lake. Swear to God, this is historical. He threatened to invade with the First Army if they didn't send someone to D.C. within the next 24 hours to brief him. And then I think they did. But I don't know. There's an argument for, if you had this technology, if you had the 2001: A Space Odyssey Club, would you want that thing to be subject to the tides of who's in the White House?
Yeah, well, so far, every president has said that they were briefed or something like. I think Carter said he was briefed. I think Clinton said he was briefed, but they said, or even Obama, and they said, I can't talk about it. So are they just teasing us, or did they really get briefed? I don't know.
It's. I mean, again, Harry S. Truman, flying saucers, given that they exist, are not created by any powers on Earth. Gerald Ford, I know UFOs exist because I've seen one. General Douglas MacArthur said, we know the famous Einstein quote, right? I know not what weapons World War III will be fought with, because it'll be some sort of A-bomb. World War IV will be fought with sticks and stones. There's a lesser-known quote from General Douglas MacArthur, World War III will be fought between interplanetary craft. I mean...
Well, we do not have a Space Force, so we'll see what happens with that.
My conspiracy, and we'll close out on this, my favorite conspiracy theory is that the Space Force wasn't created, it was just declassified. That's what I love. I'll send you some books, man. I would love to go into UFOs with you. I'm so happy you brought up UFOs. I haven't had anyone bring that up in a while. I need to put that tinfoil hat on again. I miss it.
Okay, we could chat about it. It's... I don't know if we'll be able to go this long with it, but
who gives a shit? Yeah, we can. I know we can go this long because I know I can go that long. You just sit there and just nod, all right? So I don't look like a pure crazy person.
I'll throw in something every so often.
Just bring some popcorn, bring a beer, and just be like, aliens, and I'll just start running off with it. But thank you.
Before we go, if I can just mention my website.
I was about to say, can you plug your website, your books? I know you have books, and I would definitely like to grab one, and we can discuss that as well.
Yeah, definitely. Just like to say that I've used my diving experience and my photos as background for many of my. I've written 5 novels, a nonfiction book, 3 children's books, all have to do with the ocean. www.milabooks.com, MILA books.com. Where you can put my name, Paul Mila, into Amazon, and my books will come up also. So. Okay. That would be great.
And for everybody listening, I'll put the link to that in the description and sticky it in the top comment. See, you say you've written several children's books for it, as well as one nonfiction book.
Yeah, 3 kids books. One brand new that just came out. It's a sea turtle adventure series.
Okay.
Again, using my photographs and lessons for the kids, age 4 to 9.
Yeah.
Is the book. This is the new one that just came out. Larry Loggerhead goes to the sea turtle hospital. Gracie Green Turtle finds her beach, and Harry Hawksbill helps his friends.
Hell yeah.
They're great books for kids, and like I said, I use all my own photographs, that I've taken in the book. So, and sea turtles and stuff like that. We can talk about sea turtles sometime if you like.
Absolutely.
Or anything else,
Absolutely. Paul, I love having on guests, and we talk about everything under the sun.
Great.
It's as you can tell by this podcast alone, we started with corporate finance.
Yeah.
We went to sharks. We went to whales. We dipped our toes into megalodons. And then you opened a whole can of worms and you said Roswell, which to me, man, saying Roswell is like throwing chum into the ocean around sharks. I go fucking nuts. I was like, Paul, let's wrap this up in 5 minutes. It's been 22 minutes later. I'm like, Eisenhower was gonna, and you're sitting there like, who the hell am I? Why did Mike put me in touch with this psychopath? Wait, hold on. Don't go anywhere.
Oh, okay.
So I actually, I taught myself graphic design over several years just for the fuck of it. And I actually designed my own, I sell all my own merch. But one of the designs I made is it's a sweatshirt. Like this is a one I've made.
Okay.
This is a sweatshirt and it's
how cool is that?
Yeah, it's all a bunch of blueprints I made. I tried to make it look like alien blueprints. There's a Bob Lazar on the back. Right, and it's got all the UFOs and stuff. And then if you look at the front pocket and the cuffs, they're actually high resolution scans of the 1947 Roswell newspaper.
Yes.
So you can actually look at it. Yeah. Flying saucer on ranch in Roswell region. Yeah. No details of flying disc are involved. Yeah, but just to show that's how much I love it, as I made a sweatshirt about it, dude. I love it.
One parting comment.
Yeah.
One of the things that leads me to believe almost, very emphatically about the existence of these things is the observations that were made and recorded in the Bible. Have you ever
a wheel within a wheel.
And it's a wheel within a wheel.
Ezekiel.
They had crystal spheres around their heads. That kind of thing. I mean, these are people trying to explain things in their own frame of reference.
Yes.
That they couldn't explain.
Yeah.
And to me, it's like, don't forget the symbolism. Read it for what it is.
Yeah, they saw something. What the hell did they see? These are people where the best thing of the day was leather shoes. Yeah, if you have a crystal, right? If you saw a UFO, how would you explain? Now we know it as we're like, we describe it in terms of fighter jets, or I describe it in an analogy with an atomic bomb. But if you're just going around on camels writing stuff on stone, you're going to be like a fantastic wheel within a wheel, right? Because they didn't have flying shit, so they just called it the wheel, right? A wheel within a wheel. I think the Hindu Vimanas, they described flying things as well, and they were flying chariots because they didn't know what the hell to call it.
Yeah. So I mean, to me, that's almost more, because these people had no agenda.
Yeah.
So to me, that makes it more credible.
Yeah, they didn't plan on having their story passed down for millennia. They were the original bloggers. They were just writing shit down. And if they could come to our times, they'd be like, oh shit, you guys are still reading my journal. they'd be like, that's embarrassing.
You guys haven't made much progress.
No, you guys haven't made much progress. I wrote this as just like, me and my buddies were drinking wine. So we're like, hey, water and wine, just bunch of hacky shit. But yeah, it's, I think there's more evidence for it than there isn't. It's, actually, what's today? Today's the 8th. On February 20th, I'm having on Dr. Lynn Katai, who's a medical doctor out in Phoenix, and who actually firsthand witnessed the Phoenix Lights on March 9th, 1997, which is the most widely viewed and most widely documented UFO sighting in human history. And it was over Phoenix, Arizona on March 9th, 1997. The governor, Fife Symington, was a former Air Force pilot. He said years later, he goes, it's either Pentagon or it's alien technology. They said this thing was like a mile wide, is silent, moving very slow. She wrote a whole book on it called Phoenix Lights. And actually, I'm getting on a call with her in a little bit so we can discuss the upcoming episode. But that's another one, if you haven't looked into, I would highly recommend looking. It's a bunch of people without agendas, just, right? It's just like, yeah, there it is. I mean, that's what it is. It's just a flying saucer. But no one likes to talk about it because, I mean, you feel goofy, right? It's you and I are sitting here talking, and it's just like, man, now
Makes sense to me.
it makes sense to me. Hey, man, I would rather believe in it than not, because it's a much more exciting world when you get to right? Because otherwise, it's just boring. So I'd rather entertain the idea of flying saucers, alien bodies out at Roswell, and whatever the other Air Force base is out there, Edwards, and I'd also like to entertain megalodons and all that shit. I don't care.
I was about to say, maybe a saucer will come down and a megalodon will come out.
Oh, Jesus. That would... Or it's going to come out of, right? What's the movie? Pacific Rim. The aliens come out of an interdimensional fissure at the bottom of the ocean. And they're like, it's the last place we thought it would come from, right? It's stupid, but maybe it is, man. Where else would they live? Why not?
Why not?
What other way to send a message than you come out as a megalodon? You're like, Jesus Christ, that's terrifying, right? All right, well, I've now gone for an extra half hour yelling about aliens, so this episode, par for the course. This is how my favorite episodes go, and I will link your description, or excuse me, I will link your website in the description. Stick it in the top comment. Three fictional children's books, a nonfiction book. I would love to have you on again. I'll text you, and we can shoot the shit about aliens. And
great.
Man, thank you very much.
Okay, it's been fun. Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
You have a good one. All right.
So take care.
Bye-bye.
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 Meeting. There we go.